Hello, Rad Ed listeners, and welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest on the show is John Cook, co-founder of GeekWire.
Thanks for having me. Pleased to be here. Welcome to the GeekWire offices in Fremont.
Yeah, man, they're great. They're like 2 blocks away from Google, right? So this is gorgeous.
Yeah, we don't have the free food or the big, massage tables or any of the amenities that you see at Google, but we like to have fun here.
That's when you just walk over to Google.
That's right. They won't have us. They don't like us sniffing around over there for stories.
Oh, geez, reporters.
Yeah.
But John is a co-founder of GeekWire, and for everyone who doesn't know, GeekWire is an awesome Seattle tech publication, but really all things geek and really now all things Seattle.
Seattle and beyond, yeah. We cover the intersection of technology and culture and space and civic innovation and a whole host of things related to the geek world.
Yeah. Well, you guys been around for a while now. So you've grown from
almost 8 years, yep.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a long time. It's about as long as I've been to Seattle. And you've grown from just you and Todd to offices in Fremont, lots of people working for you. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, we've had a great time building a new media company in a climate where a lot of people have said it's impossible to build a new type of news organization. So We've kept things kind of lean and mean. We have about 15 folks here now, bigger than I ever thought we'd be. But it's fun. We get to tell the stories of innovators, creators, entrepreneurs, disruptors, and how our world is changing. So life is always exciting around here.
And I guess you get to see life from all angles, right? So it's way more exciting for you than, say, like an average person who just does one thing every day. You basically do 100 different things, and you get to see, like you said, you cover life science and space and Microsofts and Amazons and all of that, right?
Yeah, it's the perfect job for somebody that has a short attention span, I would say, and that likes instant gratification. Because every day is a new day. You're not sure what you're going to wake up to. You're not sure what the big story of the day is going to be. And each day you're essentially recreating your product for your readers and audience. And that's extremely fast moving. I know the tech industry likes to talk about how fast moving it is in the software world, but I would welcome them to the media world where things change and you recreate and develop your product in a matter of minutes to get it out to your audience and readers, not a matter of months.
Yeah, I know sometimes I read articles and it says, this story is currently being updated. And the reporter is typing literally on the other end.
That's absolutely going on. That's true.
Yeah. So let's quickly roll back 8 years ago. You told me that you guys started GeekWire. Your son was a year old.
My son is 8. Yes.
Oh.
So, yes, we basically started in the same breath as my son. And I like to say I had 2 startups going at that moment. My family and my son and GeekWire.
So one thing I really want to talk about, because it's been kind of popular lately, is remote work.
Yes.
And parenthood, and specifically newborns. So I think that was like your point 8 years ago, right? How did that work out? And, was it beneficial in the long run?
I don't know. We'll see how my son turns out in 10 or 15 years to see if it was beneficial or not. I think it has its benefits and its downsides. For me, I actually really love it. I mean, I love the flexibility of being able to be wherever I need to be and still be able to pop in and do my job when I need to. The downsides of that are you can be constantly distracted in front of your family. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I've tried to get better at and have tried to work on to – if I am working from home and I'm getting demands on my time from my wife or son, to be able to cut off. And sometimes I can and sometimes I can't. I think that's the hard thing in a family, is where the family has to be able to recognize, okay, this is mission critical time on John's job. We really can't distract him and we can't be engaged. Or this is not that pressing of a thing. Maybe we can pull him out and we can go play in the backyard or something. Mm-hmm. And that sort of balance happens all the time in my world. But I do love the flexibility of it. I'm able to coach my son's baseball team, or we just had his end of season party last night, and I was there to help organize all the wacky games that we were playing for the party. And so being able to cut off and do things like that are really special and important for me to be able to be there at various times to experience part of my son's life, which I don't think I'd have that flexibility if I was a doctor or a lawyer or working at a more established company where somebody was telling me my hours and what I had to do. The flip side of that is I work a lot. I put in a lot of hours. And the old adage of, it's great to be an entrepreneur. You can pick whatever 80 hours a week you want to work is true in my case, but that's the life I've chosen. It feels really natural for me. I like it. I'm able to balance it. I think it works pretty well for our family, and my family's been very supportive of my own entrepreneurial journey. But it's not to say it's all rosy. There certainly are roadblocks to it, and it's not always a clear sailing in terms of how that dynamic works within the family.
So have you found any tricks to kind of tell your family that you're working right now and you not to be distracted? Or how do you guys even manage the schedule where you're on 24/7, ready to cover whatever comes at you?
Yeah. Some tricks are I try to make it a point of letting my wife handle the morning routine before my son is going to school and let her manage that until they're almost ready to walk out the door. And then I scramble and get ready and I walk with them to school. And I try to do that almost every day. And just to even have that moment of time with them. And so that's one thing that I've been doing a lot. After I walk my son to school, I've gotten into the habit here recently of walking to our offices here in Fremont and Seattle, which is about a 40-minute walk. And my wife often walks a decent amount of that time with me. So that's an amount of time that we're able to decompress a little bit, where you're walking, you're getting some exercise, but you're spending time together.
Wait, so in a way you do a date every day for 40 minutes?
That's a great way to look at it, because my wife was giving me a hard time the other day saying we don't do enough date nights and we don't spend enough time together. And I was like, well, what about when we walk to the office? And she's like, oh yeah, well I guess that kind of counts. But it is kind of a way to look at it. But we were just talking today about how we need to get a few more date nights into the mix for us.
What is a date night?
What is a date night? It is for us, or just generally speaking?
I mean, I don't know. Can you tell generally? I guess for you, right?
For me, oh gosh. Yeah, we really don't do many of them. We do a lot of our social time, and I guess my typical preference is we would get together with another family and get together and barbecue and just hang out. With the families engaged, and that's we spend a lot of that time. If we don't have our son with us, we would probably go see a movie or go get dinner, but it doesn't happen that often.
Well,
I mean, it just
I was actually really curious about it, right? Because a lot of people would go watch a movie, but then the time you walk together is so much better because you're not just sitting next to each other looking at somebody else on the screen.
Not, but my wife and I both do like movies, but so we get some pleasure out of that. But yeah, I would say the number of true date nights we've had where we're alone and going out and doing things is fairly rare.
Yeah. Do you guys have grandparents nearby?
No, they're in Ohio.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
so
a
little bit of a hike.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do have my brother lives here in Seattle, and so Uncle D and Aunt Sarah sometimes get called into action.
That's awesome.
Which is great.
Have you been able to figure out a babysitter? Or
we've had them on and off, but not a regular babysitter in the mix. Yeah, we've used things like the community centers when they have their parents' night out events. We've used those. We do have a family friend who will babysit occasionally, but yeah, I would say it maybe once a month.
Okay. No, I think it's important to mention because for a lot of dads, actually, and parents in general, families, it's hard to find a babysitter. It's really hard to find somebody to trust.
And yeah, luckily we do have some family friends here that we can rely on for some of that. But yeah, and oftentimes, frankly, with the work I have at GeekWire, I have a decent number of events that we're either organizing here or events in the community that I'm participating in. Mm-hmm. And so I'm out a lot doing things in the evening related to my work, which takes me away from family. And sometimes in some of those instances, my wife would tag along to, like, if we're going to some dinner or there's some sponsor-oriented activity or something. Sometimes I will drag my wife along.
What's the benefit of running this company?
It is.
Right?
I mean, she oftentimes will say, "Oh God, not another geek. Is this a GeekWire thing that we're doing?" Like, I'll get there'll be tickets that we're going to some event in town, and it's something pretty cool. But then she'll like, "All right, what's the GeekWire angle on this that we're going to this thing?" And I'm like, "Well, gosh, it's going to be fun. Don't worry about it." And then we're going to be hanging out with all the GeekWire people.
It's like, we're going to the ballet. They're using a new robotic symphony.
That's right. That's right. There's some like connection there. But you got to multitask and you got to kill two birds with one stone. Yeah. I mean, I got to live by that because I am always looking for efficiencies in terms of how I can kill 2, 3, 4 birds with one stone with the activities that I'm trying to pack into the day. I just have, I have so much going on. It's just so, and I know everybody's stressed and pulled in so many directions, but when you're running a company and you have a family and you want to be engaged in your friend circle and school and all the different things, like, it's tough. Like, yesterday, my day was coming in to the office and had just a really hard day because we're working really hard on this Cloud Tech Summit that we have coming up at the end of the month here in June. And, there's a lot of stress and a lot of moving pieces in terms of how we're coordinating speakers and getting attendees out and making sure the event logistics are all coming together. And so I got my mind deep in the middle of that. At the same time, I have volunteered at our school to do a new program called Let Me Run, which is a great program. It's like Girls on the Run, which is a pretty popular nonprofit program. But in this case, Let Me Run is about young boys and building their self-confidence. And so earlier in the year I agreed to do this program with my wife, and where we're doing organized runs with these 4th and 5th graders. And so I had to figure out buzz up there to get up to that, and then there's the baseball party we're organizing, and like all this stuff is coming together, and I'm still trying to juggle aspects of the business and making sure that things are all coming together, and that's the hardest thing. And I think where there can really truly be some stress points and where tension rises in our family, if I'm getting stretched in that many directions, it's hard to do everything well. But that's the balance.
What do you think your son's attitude to that is right now? Is like dad the coolest guy because he's doing all this stuff? I don't think he thinks
dad's the coolest guy, no. I think he likes aspects. I mean, there's a give and take with everything. I think he likes aspects of it and recognizes it, and there are elements of it that are bothersome to him that I can't always be present. And it's a struggle.
The end.
Yeah, it's a struggle. End of Rad Dad. It's a struggle. That's all you need to know, folks. Goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's, actually a struggle, or you recognize it more of a struggle because you're paying a lot more attention because you're doing so many things, right? Because on the contrary, you can have somebody like a lawyer or a doctor being at work, till 8 or 9 p.m.
Well, it's also an active choice. I mean, I think there are families that the parents don't want to be that engaged and don't want to. And I would probably say we're overly engaged. If I were to give ourselves criticism, I would say we're too engaged. And probably what we need to do is, scale back a little bit. But I guess I'm not wired that way. Most people who know me know that I'm not really wired to.
Well, now you've set
kind of take it easy and just kick back and let things roll. But there are people that make the choice just to not be that engaged, and their family's life. And I just don't want that. It's one of the reasons why I do think it's really great to have your own small business that you're running, because you can. And that's kind of how I grew up. I should step back for a moment, where my mom was a newspaper reporter and worked out of the home. And so I was really exposed to journalism and that culture and the media culture really early on in my life. And then my dad was a small business owner. He had a car and truck dealership that he operated, which was the family business. And my parents were extremely engaged and active in our lives. I mean, I don't think they missed a sporting event we went to. They could always take off time if needed to be there and do things. And that's pretty cool, right? I mean,
I think it's really cool. And you know what? I think it's interesting because there was a lot of talk about how small businesses are dying, and kind of previous generation of Americans were all about small businesses as well as all local. And people, lived in their stores, but they kind of worked and lived together. And now everybody goes 9 to 5 off to somewhere on an hour-long commute. And I was just talking to a dad the other day who said he realized that some of his company works remotely. So he went to his manager and said, I want to work remotely. And the manager said, well, why don't we figure out a van with Wi-Fi? And so, because they're moving further away from the offices, and you can take the van, they'll drive you, and you can just work from the car. And he was just like, no, I just don't want to commute anymore.
Commute's a bear. I don't think I could do it anymore.
But to big companies, it's like, well, what do you mean you don't want to commute? What do you mean you want to stay home and spend time with your family, right?
This is why I'm probably unemployable at this point, because I wouldn't want anyone telling me how to run or operate my life. It's one of the good reasons to start your own business.
But was it, how hard was it at the very beginning when you were running around trying to start? Wait, is it harder to run GeekWire now than it was 8 years ago?
That's a great question. We're at a really interesting time, so that's a little bit more of a complex question. We're at a kind of an interesting inflection point in terms of where we are and how much opportunity there's in front of us. And so we have so much percolating right now and so much going on that it does feel as crazy as when we started. And I think that's in part because we just have a lot going on, and we've kept our team pretty small and bootstrappy in order to make this a successful venture. As I said earlier in the show, media is a hard business. Mm-hmm. We were not getting into an easy business here. A lot of media companies are dying, and information is getting fragmented into 100,000 different channels, including the Rad Dad podcast. And it's not as centralized. And because of that, it's harder to command an audience, and that creates all sorts of challenges. And so with media going through that, it's a tough business to be in. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's always weighing on my mind, that issue.
So you had a bit of a break in the last couple of years, but now it's high gear again.
Yeah, I don't know if there was never a break. No. I mean, it maybe went from 100 miles an hour to 80. And now we're back to 110, mm-hmm. As the same as when we were starting. And we do have more resources and some great people around us on the GeekWire team now that does allow us to back off a bit, but with that, we are adding more things to do, and more things to go after. So, yeah.
Actually, let's talk about the business side real quick, because I'm curious as the media is changing, right? And I can see some people are putting paywalls, some people putting giant advertising. There's some, once again, the new type of media who are trying to create different type of advertising so it's more engaging and hopefully monetizes better. Very good there. Oh, it's cool. It's a conversational podcast. We can put this stuff on air.
Well, I'm checking my phone to see if I'm on soccer duty tonight. Yeah. So ties into the podcast theme. It's so good. I gave you that warning beforehand.
Yeah, it's fine. I was fully expecting a text of an emoji with a soccer ball, a foot on the soccer ball.
That's right.
But anyhow, as the media landscape is changing, right? How are you guys responding to that? And Does it put pressure on you as a reporter, especially, since your mom was a reporter and you saw this entire transition? What kind of pressure does it put on you in order to sustain the company and still deliver the quality that you set out to deliver?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. You have to be flexible as a media organization. You have to move quickly. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think GeekWire is somewhat, successful, is because we are pretty lean and can pivot and move relatively quickly. We're not a 100-year-old physical newspaper that has a $100 million in debt tied up related to their new printing press that they just opened up, thinking that more people were going to be buying printed media in the next 20 or 30 years. We don't have that baggage around which allows us to move fast, which allows us to tell stories in really creative ways in the platform that we've chosen. And so, I think it's certainly a blessing to not have that sort of baggage. And I came out of that traditional newspaper world. Mm-hmm. And so while there's a lot of business baggage related to it, there's a lot of great editorial content positives that have come out of having that legacy media be part of our DNA at GeekWire. And Todd Bishop and myself, who are the two co-founders, come out of a very traditional news-driven environment where journalism matters, journalistic standards matter, quest for that truth matters. Mm-hmm. And those are all principles that we absolutely adhere to and are extremely important in our day-to-day operations here. And so while we're kind of new school in our business approach and platform, we're extremely old school in our storytelling format and principles of journalism. And so we think that's a really nice match. If you still can build a community based on the trust that you have with your readers and audience because you are committed to high quality and high quality journalism, which is the standard of traditional news business. You could argue that a lot of the traditional news business, especially as it relates to things like TV-oriented news, doesn't really adhere. They've, in my mind, have lost a lot of the core principles of doing great journalism. And so they've damaged their brand, in my mind. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the reasons why we've been able to have success is because we're flexible and nimble and able to pivot on our business side, and we have a flexible platform in the digital world to play with, yet we are very committed to being old school in our news approach.
It sounds really good, and I think that's something I've learned over the last couple of years personally, that I think you have to have core principles, but really you can't have – everything can't be a principle, right? You have to have a couple, and then everything else has to be flexible around it. Otherwise you'll die because the world will change into a different direction. But do you guys get in trouble where you cover, say, one of the Seattle companies, right, and they don't like it? How do you respond to that?
Oh, that's happened throughout my career, yes. I don't say we get in trouble. I say we're doing our job. People get mad at us all the time. We're not doing our job if people aren't getting mad at us. I guess this is where it does help that Todd and I have been rooted as part of the tech community here for as long as we have, because in some of these instances, we've dealt with some of the companies or entrepreneurs for not months, but decades, in many instances. I mean, dating myself, but we're hanging around, we're here. And I think people respect that. And I think that's the number one thing that's the only thing you can ask is that people respect the role that you have as being a media organization and telling the stories. And some people get that, other people don't. And when people don't get it, sometimes they run into the hard truth that we're not here to be their PR organization or a marketing firm. And that's a reality. And to me, it's an educational process. A lot of people have lost faith and lost a sense or don't even have any knowledge of what it's like to have a news type of organization covering a community. And that's sad to me. And so for me, there's an educational component to this that this is what it means to have press covering things. You don't always like what is being said. Now, we certainly are trying to be truthful, and we don't want to have inaccurate information, and we go through the process of correcting that if we do get something wrong. But just not liking the tone or style or the fact that we covered a lawsuit or a layoff or whatever it is, I mean, that's the way it goes. I mean, we deal with that. And the funny thing, and I get to ask this question occasionally, is what do you do with these folks that come out with you? The funny thing is, I've been around in the community so long now that I have been in battles and fights with CEOs that I know that are probably pretty well known that have gotten so mad and angry with us or me personally, and have had many go-arounds, and now they're just perfectly great sources of information for us. So and this is something I probably learned. I learned from my mom, who was a reporter, is like, you just gotta keep developing the relationship, and like some of your greatest enemies at one point could become your best sources of information, especially over time. I've seen this. Usually you're at least I feel I'm right. You're in the right position. You think you're doing what's right, and they just are angry and venting and are embarrassed or upset about how something's being portrayed in the short term. So it's a short-term fuse that's burning for them versus this much longer-term approach that I have towards it. And once that short-term fuse for them blows, then I think sometimes those people are somewhat reflective after a year or two, or maybe some people never get over it. But I've had many instances where people get over it and they're like, they kind of are like, I was kind of being a jerk on that. I see what you were – I understand what was going on now. Yeah. And then sometimes they become good sources of yours.
Yeah.
So anyway.
No, it's great to hear it, and the fact that you mentioned that people are not really used to proper newspaper covering the day-to-day, right? Because lately there's been a lot of fighting between, say, like Elon Musk and the news sources on Twitter, right? Back and forth. But really, in some of that, looking at some publications, you can tell that they're just going for click-throughs, right?
Yeah.
There's no real information in there. On the other hand, though, like, well, yeah, it is newspaper's job to like actually find something interesting.
That is true.
Truthful.
Exactly. But that's my point when everybody brings up, clickbaity stuff.
Yeah.
And
but everybody
you are supposed to be trying to find new and interesting angles and information and present that in a way that people want to consume it.
Right, but especially for tech founders, you kind of came to expect that you say, hey, I'm launching something, and everybody jumps and they cover it in a positive light, right? But then it's not really newspaper anymore. It's just a PR machine. It might be an email subscription.
So are people on RadDag going to want to really dig deep into the news business? Are they going to be interested on this?
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Because I can go off on this topic.
No, you'd be surprised what people are interested in, right? And I think it's important that people kind of also learn something new that they haven't.
Yeah, absolutely, and especially in this era with the whole fake news phenomenon going on. I mean, it's an important discussion.
And like serendipity works in funny ways, because you guys sort of gave me this first way to share my thoughts publicly to a larger audience when you reshared one article that I wrote on my blog.
Yeah, that's how we got reconnected here, wasn't it? Did you reach out and you said
I did, because
you said you wanted something changed in an old article?
Yeah,
because there was an old link.
No longer pointing
there was an old link,
URL.
and so you reached out, and I was like, "Hey, what are you going on?" And I think I saw your podcast.
Yeah.
And I asked about it. Then we started talking about it.
Well, you were that, by the way. But funniest thought is I actually wrote it in a coffee shop that used to be here right in the house over there. We can see out of your window.
I remember that, yes. That place.
So,
I wish it was still there.
Yeah, it was a great place. And the other article came out of that coffee shop, too, was about entrepreneurship, because, the owner was actually running – he was running IOU business, right, where you can just get a coffee and pay him a month later.
Oh, nice.
Awesome. Yeah. But anyways,
very Seattle.
It was great.
Very old Seattle.
It was the only place I knew where I could just forget my wallet at home and then still pay months later. But so with everything you're doing now, what would you teach your son about life where he's going to end up knowing what you know about the world today and how it's changing?
Oh my, about where the world is now and where it's changing. Well, I think we have such a interesting perspective here at GeekWire that we do get to cover entrepreneurs, innovators, creators, and really talk about the future and what it's going to look like. And so a lot of the things that we're writing about and talking about, it's interesting to think about. This is the stuff that's potentially going to impact my son and his generation. If you're thinking about AI, or, autonomous vehicles, space travel, all this stuff. I mean, it's really probably going to come to fruition, not in my life, but in his. And so I just want him to be exposed to all the cool stuff that we get to cover and experience. And he's a little young at this point, but pretty soon I want to have him start to go out on kind of assignments with me. And I'll do this occasionally, but like assignments are just kind of meet some of these people and participate in the activities that we're doing. As I said, his attention span right now is probably not quite deep enough to go out to like see a lecture on autonomous vehicles. But pretty soon, and I just want him to be exposed to that. Plus, I really want him to be exposed to entrepreneurial thinking and thinking on his own and knowing that he can build and do something on his own. And so I've been trying to stress that to him. The other thing I'm really trying to work, and this is the hardest thing for me, and I'd love to get your advice or the advice of your listeners, is how to stress. I think what was so important to me, watching my mom and dad work, was instilling work ethic in a deep and meaningful way. And not work ethic for the fact that they just want to work, but work because they're passionate about it and they love what they do. And I saw that in my parents, and maybe it's hopefully by osmosis, my son will pick that up as well. Because the challenge with me is I love what I do. I can spend many hours. I mean, I can spend most of the day, almost every waking moment, doing what I'm doing. And I have to physically break off to go and engage in the other parts of my life. And I've gotten better at this, I think. You'll have to ask my wife. She doesn't always agree. But I think I've gotten better at knowing, like, okay, I got to turn this off and go do this activity or shut the laptop for a bit. And so I want to somehow pass on that lesson of work ethic and passion around learning and the things that I get to experience, because I think we have an amazing job here at GeekWire, which is really cool. I mean, you wake up every day and there's something really interesting happening, and you get to become a subject matter expert in it for 2 or 3 hours to figure it out. I mean, you're constantly learning. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, there's really no job like that I can think of that's that fast in terms of your ability to learn something new. And so I guess I would just like to have him understand the work ethic, the entrepreneurship, and this love of innovation and what's coming next.
Well, you've got a perfect job for it, right? Because you can take your son and go have a lunch with Satya while you interview him.
Well, not always get a lunch with Satya, but nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they just, this whole GitHub thing you can talk about. There you go.
He's 8. I don't know if he's grasping GitHub. Yeah. There are 8-year-olds out there that probably grasp 8.
He's already 8 and still not grasping GitHub?
No. He would. Now, if I were to go sit down with anybody on the Xbox team, he would be very excited about that.
There you go. But
yes.
But that's right to the point, right? Because I think there's some kind of stigma about almost entrepreneurship and exploration in the world. I feel that way, at least, because when you try and go do something that's interesting to you, people say, well, no, things that are interesting to you, they're really for your hobbies. Like for your 9 to 5, you should really go suck up that other thing. I totally disagree with that. And absolutely was not raised that way. My parents raised me and my 2 brothers to find your passion and not worry about the work. And that was a great thing, to be blessed with that from an early age. I was never encouraged to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or scientist or whatever. They just said, get interested in something and then be interested in it, and like just and go with that. And I think that's just a great way to, if you're passionate about something, you'll find work around it. Yeah.
And you'll be more satisfied in your life because it's fun to do. you'll be into it.
No, I'm glad you're saying that. I mean, I was talking to some parents the other day who are writing, forget the proper word for it, but not their will, but basically, what happens to their money should they both pass away and what their kids can do. And they're putting a college fund for them, and they're basically saying, well, if the parents are not around, you're allowed to be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. And that's your path in life. And their logic is like, well, if we're not there to guide them, they need something that will keep them on their feet. And I'm like, I kind of get it, but then if they hate their life, how great is that going to be?
And I think I think work is changing so dramatically, and it's going to not look anything like what it does today, that you trying to place the bet on what that is going to be in 20 or 30 years is probably a fool's bet. You might be setting them up for failure by putting them into a career such as that. This is why I think entrepreneurship is such a smart thing to expose young people to, because I think our society is becoming more entrepreneurial. And I think those are the people that the way work is shifting, that people that are able to find their own opportunity and develop something around that, I think are going to be rewarded in the next couple decades more than just being an engineer at a company or a lawyer at a firm. That's my feeling. I might be completely wrong, but that's why I would rather encourage that sort of mindset. And I know it's not for everybody, but if I want to set up my own son for success, that's the path that I would push towards.
And in terms of success, I realize that intuitively both of us want to talk about success in terms of what you do. But let's talk about a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey, your son, and health, because I think it's a very forgotten topic in entrepreneurship. Right?
Absolutely. When I started GeekWire, so going back, and I'm sorry to cut you off if you have a specific question there, but I can riff on that for just a quick second, because before Todd and I started GeekWire, we had left the Seattle PI, which was a daily newspaper here in Seattle, and we had joined up with a business publication in Seattle, and we started a new thing. And that didn't work out the way we were hoping to. And during that period, I was extremely stressed. I thought this was my chance to be an entrepreneur, but I really wasn't. It was kind of a baby step towards it. We weren't fully in, really, at the end of the day. And I got really stressed, and I was working crazy hours, and I was just not taking care of myself at all. I was just not exercising, not eating well, working nonstop. And it had an impact on my health. And I remember when I started GeekWire with Todd, I said, I'm going to make a point to make sure I do a couple things. I have a smoothie in the morning, which I've gotten out of the habit of, but I've taken care of myself in better ways. So I was going to have a smoothie in the morning because I wasn't eating. I wasn't eating during that 2-year period. I would just get up and I would go, and I wouldn't stop. And then I said, and I'm going to exercise, and I'm going to get back into playing soccer a lot more. I'm a big soccer player. And so I started doing that. I would, during the early days at GeekWire here in Fremont, there was a pickup soccer game in the middle of the afternoon up on Queen Anne Hill, which is just nearby. And I would buzz up there at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and play soccer. This, again, the flexibility opportunity. But I needed it for my mental health. And so middle of the day, I'd go and play soccer for hour and a half, and then come back to work. And I was much happier. And I've gotten out of that pickup game, but I'm still playing soccer, and I still am now walking in and running. Like I said, I'm doing this Let Me Run program, so I'm running occasionally. And so I'm trying to keep the health aspect as a forefront of my life. I personally need that. I know it, and sometimes I go through good periods with it, sometimes not so much, where I'm eating well and taking care of myself and getting in good shape. And it's just critical, that healthy body, healthy mind go, hand in hand. And so I try to work at it. And I know I'm just in a better place when I'm taking better care of myself.
Right on. No, I think it's important.
So it's critical. I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, because it is absolutely one of the most important things I think you can do is take care of yourself physically.
In popular media or tech world does not really accentuate that.
The other part of this, just to interrupt for a quick second there, the other part of this is not only the eating and exercise part, but the sleep. Now, Arianna Huffington, Huffington Post, well-known entrepreneur and business person, she is really big on this idea of the importance of sleep to your well-being. And there's been now a lot more attention, I think, towards sleep because the common, rhetoric in the startup and tech world is like, well, I'm working my, 16 hours a day and I don't have time to sleep and I'm eating pizza at the office and then I'm back coding, a few hours later. And like people are like, no, it's really, really bad for you.
It only works in movies.
Yeah. It's like, but people, I had that. That was the lifestyle I had when I was starting out. And yeah, it is bad for you. And so I think I sleep pretty well. I sleep very soundly. And I could always probably do a little bit better on my diet and exercise, but, these are critically important things, critically important.
While we're talking about this, just sort of a plug in terms of the diet and exercise. And my oldest is only 3 and a bit, but even at that time I fluctuated in weight by maybe 30 pounds on and off, because of lack of sleep and poor, exercise or diet. And it's just the message to all the dads out there, like, you really got to be on top of this, right? And between exercise, sleep, and good nutrition, you have to do at least 2 well.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to gain weight, but then it's so much harder to lose it.
Yeah,
and just like absolutely. Your quality of life goes up.
And especially if for the older dads out there, and I would put myself in that camp, I'm 46, is the thing that is scary about it is like you really do start to slow down,
Really?
And yes, and if you're for me, exercise is a way to actually, it keeps your energy up. You think you're going to get tired, but it actually provides you with more energy to do activities with your son or daughter. And so, that's the other aspect of this is like keeping that health up. So you're like able to go run a 5K with your kid,
Yeah.
Because it can deteriorate quickly.
Yeah. I'll link to another episode, but I was talking to a friend who said his 10-year-old said she wanted to climb a mountain. And he was like, whoa, I don't even know if I can climb a mountain, being a 40-year-old dad, never mind the 10-year-old, but they did it, and it's a great story. But yeah, so you really got to keep it up. But so 8 years into it, you guys figured a lot of stuff as your family. Your son's more or less happy, right? This works. You can take time off and take him to work sometimes. What do you think were other big learning experiences that you'd want to share with parents, or like just remind future parents? Because I think that is also popular with parents, with families who are going to become parents, right? Because people get to listen and see what it feels like to be a dad.
Yeah, my advice that I give to my older self today that I wish I would have followed earlier in my life applies both to my 2 startups, as I mentioned, my son and GeekWire. Do it earlier. Start earlier. I think we started too late in the process on both. I wish I would have started GeekWire earlier, and I wish I would have had my son earlier. And it ties into some of the things we were just talking about energy and health, and that stuff really starts to slow down as you get older. You could say I'm wiser, but I think by mid-30s I was ready to do it, and it would have just been probably better just to start earlier in the process. So that's the advice that I give to myself.
What held you back?
Oh, gosh. On the kids' side, it was, my wife and I got married a little bit later, but even still, we were not as quick as we probably could have been there. I think just a fear of changing my life up and changing my lifestyle. I think I was really happy with the way my life was going, and unable to, and really credit to my wife, who really pushed to do this, you know, and like now I'm very happy that it has happened. But you know, I think there are guys out there, and since this is a guy podcast, you know, that like you're in your 20s and 30s, and you're just living kind of that lifestyle, you know, of having fun being a guy without much more responsibility, right? And some people are able to move out of that phase of their life maybe quicker than most. Than I was probably on the slower end. And so I think, and there was probably just a fear about that change, that my life wasn't going to be as fun or interesting anymore. Well, the fact of the matter is your life becomes more fun and more interesting because you've introduced this new dynamic to it. You can get really bored and enter a period of just complacency if you just kind of keep things status quo for too long. So mix it up. I guess that's kind of the advice, you know, mix it up.
Have
mix
a
it
couple
up.
kids.
Have a couple of kids, mixes it up. Yeah, it definitely does. And but the same thing goes to career or doing the startup. I mean, it's interesting, the parallels between the family, creating the family and creating the startup. I mean, I knew I had worked in newspapers for 15 plus years by the time we were starting GeekWire, and knew the rules of the road, and you could get comfortable with that. And a lot of people were getting comfortable with it at the organization I was working at, the Seattle PI, and thought it was just going to be that way forever. And they were just going to be right out their careers like that. And I guess the advice is like, you got to mix it up. You got to keep mixing things up and changing course and keeping things interesting. And it's good to do that every once in a while.
And conversely, is there anything you miss now from your previous life, you know, before you were a dad, that you would have done more of if you were to do it again?
Not so much. I mean, maybe everyone says travel and go see other aspects of the world, but I'm pretty happy with how that has played out. So anything else that I wish I would have done before family entered? Is that kind of the question? Yeah. Any other things that I wish I would have accomplished or gotten to do? Not too much. I don't have too many regrets in
not so
life.
much regrets, but, you know, people say travel is because traveling with kids is harder.
Traveling with kids is harder, absolutely. And I don't have the opportunity to maybe just pick up and go, you know, backpacking through South America with the family now. Well, although some people would say, why not? Why don't you go do that? Maybe that'd be a great experience and you should, but it is harder. And there is a business to run, and it does become more challenging to do that. So I would probably say that, just experience more things. I feel like I've had a really great life and have gotten an opportunity to experience a lot of different things that I'm extremely thankful for. You know, I just feel like I'm in the elite of the world. You know, when you look at the problems that many people in society face across the planet, gosh, I mean, how can't you feel blessed to be in the situation that I feel like I'm in, with two great parents that raised me, with an awesome family, with two supportive brothers, and like a strong knit family, with a great family here now in Seattle, and, you know, being able to do my own entrepreneurial thing around something that I love and having the freedom to pursue that. I mean, it's just like, I don't have many complaints. I don't have many complaints with that. So I guess I'm happy. You know, I'm happy with the way things have played. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the point. That's the place I want to try to stay. You know, is like, I'm very satisfied, and I never try to lose the perspective that I think what's been given to me is extremely unique, and I have to take advantage of that to its full potential, because I know there are a heck of a lot of people on this planet that weren't given even an ounce of what I got, you know? And that sticks with me. And I think that makes me happy. That knowing that, coming from that standpoint. And I'm not a materialistic person, really, at all. I mean, I'm passionate about my family and my friends and making sure that I'm having fun and doing a good job with the thing that I'd like to do with our business, And that's what gives me the most satisfaction. All the other stuff is just a little bit of clutter.
That's great. Last question. So let's imagine you guys sold GeekWire tomorrow for millions and millions of dollars. What would you do?
I don't know. I'm pretty high energy. I don't see myself as being somebody, at least at this stage, retiring or setting sail. I would probably want to take a little bit of time to decompress and spend more time with family and see what that, and really, really experience some going down from 110 miles an hour and take it down to 20 for a little bit and see what that's like. But I don't think I'd get stuck at 20 for too long. I think it would have to ramp up for me. But I don't know what that next thing would be for me. I love being in the media business. I think it's fascinating. I love being able to tell stories and connect people through the storytelling that we do. And so I would probably stick in something related to media. And whether that's helping the next generation of media entrepreneurs or reporters, I do feel pretty passionate about the idea of that the free press in our society today is under attack. And I hope this is a temporary attack, but who knows how that's going to play out. I think it's absolutely imperative to our democracy that we have a free press that is respected and able to operate on its own. And I don't know how that's going to play out in the next several years. And that's scary as hell to me. And so that's a passion that I would want to make sure I was at the forefront of, and making sure that people understand, as kind of this educational component of knowing why it's important to have media doing what they're doing. But yeah, I couldn't draw it out in terms of what that next stage would be. Well, I'm not going to become a professional soccer player. I'm too old for that. So that's.
You could just enter the Olympics.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad to hear that it's working out, and I think it's very reassuring for other parents that you can do all of these things and come out well.
You
on
can.
The other side. And,
sometimes you do it well, sometimes not so well. But yeah.
Well,
at least try.
Exactly, and if you try, you'll do fine, right? Like it's a gamble, but you can do it. So I love this little trip through entrepreneurship and parenting, and I think it's valuable for other parents to hear. If you have anything else, let me know. I'm happy to hear more, but otherwise, I think it's been great. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you. And if there's more questions, we'll come back to it another day and answer those.
Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Thanks, John and GeekWire.